titter pigs, oh yeah. They're gonna talk about sweet, sweet RPGs. And it's the Titter Pigs, the RPG podcast. Am I getting paid for this one?
Welcome back to Titter Pigs. This is episode 33. Scott and I are back in the studio, and what a ride this episode has been to put together.
Oh God, yes. So many broken promises, so many heartbreaks, as they say. We've been full of so many wants, but very little time. And
I think I own most of this one again.
Oh yeah, no, but this is not. Your car broke down, or
no.
your granddaughter had a dance thing that you forgot about. No, this was 100% out of your control.
Yeah,
and I think, what would you describe it in a nutshell as?
The world is burning, and hey, it is what it is, and that's all I can say.
Yes, exactly. Those who know Keith understand exactly what he means. So, this was supposed to be our introduction to our new segment where we were taking a dive into particular games of which our patrons chose ElfQuest. And we were going to go through it pretty much a bit like chapter by chapter or so many pieces here or there and just kind of give our opinions on certain things. But unfortunately, the availability that we have is just nil. So we're just going to go ahead and see what's new with the Titter Pigs, touch on a couple things before we move into our wonderful interview that we did with Alex and
James.
God,
can you say his name though?
Droucker.
There you go.
Droucker.
That's my man. There you
Droucker.
go.
Yes,
but I would like to say though, we are going to get back to our promise of diving into this game. We will peel back the layers of ElfQuest and discuss it.
Yes,
just not today.
Yeah, there's just we just don't have the time, and it deserves the proper attention to detail that we were doing. It does.
So. We don't want to rush through it and spend 5 or 10 minutes digging into the background, the lore of the setting and character generation, just to kind of feel like we've just hand waved it, just to fill the square, check a box, and do it a disservice and do our listeners a disservice. So.
Right.
We're going to kick the can down the road for another week or two. And in that meantime, we'll get it recorded and get that first part out to everybody.
Right. So with that, we're just going to go through with what we've been up to since our last episode and just touch briefly on a few things. But before we do that, I was telling Keith that we got a very nice email today.
Ooh, I love emails.
Yeah, and
we don't get many.
And it came from an unlikely source, one that
Did it come from the president?
Oh no.
How about Britney Spears?
Well, if it did, I wouldn't want to read it because who knows what we're going to get blamed in that email.
Fair enough.
We just timestamped this right here without question. So, but no, it came from our much neglected YouTube channel, where we upload our.
We have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, we do. Sorry, but it is where we upload our episodes for those who enjoy listening on YouTube. There's a lot of people out there who find that a lot easier than going to Apple iTunes or any of the other podcasters. So I made a promise a while ago to try to keep that updated. But as you can tell, maybe means no. We're like the bad stepfather. I'll be there for your graduation, son. But anyways, So from user Age or AGE, they write, just thought I'd come here to make my confession that I'm a longtime listener of your show. And I've been playing tabletop RPGs, or what he writes, TTRPGs, for over 35 years, and only just now realize where the word titterpigs derives from. Seriously can't believe I've never heard this before. Laughing face. And this was from our episode 1, introducing titterpigs, where I think we kind of laid in thick on the disclaimer. Because when we started this, we weren't expecting it, and we did get a bit of feedback of like, titterpigs, what is this? Some chauvinist guys talking about gaming, but hopefully we've kind of passed that. But even still, it's still funny to hear that there are people who have been listening to us for some time and who really have no clue what titterpigs means. So it was nice to hear from you, Age. Thank you. And also, revelation is not a bad thing. It can hit you at any time. But
I'm just glad somebody emailed us. Because we don't get a lot of emails. They go in fits and spurts, and hey, thank you for taking the time to email us. Everybody's opinion is important. I'm glad you had a revelation. So welcome to the Titterpigs Club.
Yes, and thank you for listening to episode 1. I honestly have no clue what's on that episode anymore. So
I gotta go back and listen to it again.
It is kind of one of those things I do too, but I kind of don't want to. It's like looking at your old elementary school photos. You're like, I can't believe Mom and Dad made me get that haircut.
Why am I wearing a Garanimals striped shirt? Gross.
Thanks, but before we move on to what we've been up to, yes, this does ring my bell, and yes, I will be updating our YouTube channel here in the next few days and getting everything up to date, including this episode after it comes out, and trying my best to maintain that. So thank you also for the reminder, Age, as well as the compliment. So, what's new?
Oh, what's new with Keith? Well, Keith can't talk about a lot of things, but Keith's been busy at work.
Yeah.
But outside of work, Keith has been not very busy in the gaming side of things, unfortunately, because work has been encompassing my life. If it's not work, it's this professional development class. It's a college program I'm taking for work. But I have gotten a few things in the mail lately because, I still like to get stuff in the mail and read when I can. What have I gotten lately? One of the publishers I work for, or proofread for, do some editing for, called Zagrozy out of Poland. They sent me some print copies of an anthology they just published. And it's got 8 scenarios. They're for Call of Cthulhu. So they were independent. They were originally released as individual scenarios in Polish, and then translated to English. And I helped them with the English translations. They released them individually. And then after, now it's probably been almost a year in the work to get the anthology all compiled. And then because of some work snafus on the company's lead person, Merrick's end.
Yeah.
Because he's a college professor in Vienna right now, I believe, as a visiting professor. Getting it all compiled and published. But it's finally out and just became available right before Miskatonic Repository Convention. And it's 8 Call of Cthulhu scenarios. They're different and they're very unique.
Are they all 1920s Cthulhu, or do they...
They run the gamut.
That's cool.
They can be... with some work, they can be moved on the timeline, and they are generic enough that they're not set in a specific city or location, and they're written that way so you can set it in Berlin. You can set it in England. You could, with some work, with a little bit of effort, you could put it in the US, and they're written that way so that they are not stovepiped into one location.
That's nice. That's
Yeah.
very considerate of them, especially a European company, which they could easily just make it wherever they're from, to keep it simple. Because I would imagine, and I think it's pretty obvious that it takes work, extra work, to make something somewhat. I don't think the term generic does it justice, but something that can be applied easily because of the giant diversity of Call of Cthulhu and how. Yep. With one little word or one little change, suddenly it's 1920s only, or it's modern only, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, absolutely. So for anybody that's interested, the book is called Zagrozi from Beyond, and it's 8 scenarios, and it's an anthology of scenarios for Call of Cthulhu.
That's cool.
The other thing I've gotten in the mail, or I say mail, in my email. Somebody gifted me a download code for the most recent Humble Bundle for Vampire the Masquerade that also included Hunter, The Gathering, the 5th edition core rulebook in it too. So this is like the mega bundle without. It's a second tier. It did not include the Rivals card game thing or whatever it was.
Oh yeah, whatever.
Neither she nor I really cared about that thing.
Right.
So I've got all that, and that is a ton of material. That's thousands of pages of material.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know what to make of that yet.
Well, thankfully, Roz is the big vampire fan.
Oh yes, yes.
So
Roz is my patron on that one. She gifted it to me, and it was purely by accident. She ended up with 2 purchases by accident. You obviously can't return it, so she's like, "You want it?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?"
Yeah, no, I have been the beneficiary of Roz's generosity on things that, like, I don't need this. Here, you want it? Like, sure, yeah, I'll take it. I won't say what it is, but just in case. But yeah, no, there are several things that I've got an extra. Here you go.
So Roz is fantastic. She's a great person, super generous. But I've started just barely skimming the surface. I've read some of the Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition stuff in the past. Roz ran a little local a scenario for me locally with her nephew when he was here, and we had some fun with it, and I was intrigued enough. And so when I got this bundle, I don't know, maybe a week ago, I started reading Chicago by Night, and that is a very interesting presentation.
Right.
It's very graphic heavy. So like my tablet, which is old, it's like 8 or 10 years old. I mean, my tablet's straining because it's multiple layered on each page, and you can't break the layers down. And it's a strain on my tablet, but
oh God,
it's beautiful. But I like the way that this story element to the beginning of Chicago by Night's laid out. So it's
okay.
Well, I'm going to see where it goes.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just say nothing. I mean, nothing wrong with getting a giant bundle of stuff.
Oh my God, yeah.
That you probably do what many of us do. We get excited, we start reading it, and then even the virtual stuff will sit on the virtual shelf and eventually mock you, just going. But it's there though.
So the new shiny comes in.
Exactly. So
and
what
then
else?
The other thing, and I haven't gotten it yet, but I do want to give a shout out because I'm really kind of excited about this. Hence the new shiny. Yeah. I've got Gods of the Forbidden North Volume 1 due in tomorrow or the next day. And this is a like 473 page print on demand book. It's just volume 1. It's a 3-part. Volumes 2 and 3 haven't been published yet, but it's the first part in a massive Frozen Waste campaign using old school essentials. Or 4 old school essentials.
Okay.
And it's published by Paul Hummock Press, and it was kickstarted a while ago. And the publisher was nice enough to give me a discount to purchase it so I could do a review on it. But that's a heavy lift for a lot of that's a lot of reading.
God.
So
how many pages?
But I am looking for it's 473 pages.
Ooh. That's a lot of glue Drive-Thru's going to have to use.
Yeah,
to hold those pages
it's
together.
Scaring me. Because big books have come destroyed or falling apart from Drive-Thru, so I'm kind of scared unless their quality's increased. Although that package I got today from Drive-Thru had 2 books in it from Zagrozi from Drive-Thru, and it was double wrapped in cardboard, 2 mailers. So I was kind of impressed.
Yeah.
So, well, the verdict's out, not the verdict's out, the jury's out. We'll see what happens when this one gets here. But I'm really kind of excited about this. They sent me the digital copy too, and I've read the first 20 or 30 pages of the PDF, and I like the way that it's laid out. There's this is why we wrote this. This is some of our thought process, some of our design philosophy, and I really like how they laid it out in very simple language, and I hope that carries through for my little pea brain. And if it does, I'm super excited for what the whole first part of this campaign holds.
Cool.
So
I need to check that
follow.
out. Yeah, I need to check that out. That sounds great. Can't do with enough OSC stuff, because it's usually most of the OSC stuff is quality no matter where it comes from. Oh,
this is gorgeous. I mean, the PDF, the art throughout is beautiful. And
it doesn't ring a bell, but it's one of those things where there's just so much OSC stuff that kind of comes, and I'm sure I probably may have seen it at one point in time, but it just got filed away somewhere.
It had so when they were advertising the Kickstarter a year ago or so, and then during the Kickstarter, it had a different cover, and what it published with, the covers are different. The proposed cover, the actual cover are different, so that's why it didn't catch my radar when it hit the like street date, like, hey, we're releasing the book, and here here's the cover, and he was showing some side by sides of, hey, here's the black and white, here's the standard color, here's the premium color, and it didn't catch my attention. Like, I'm like, hey, this looks really cool. I'm kind of intrigued, and then I had to go do a little bit of research before I reached out to him and go, oh, this was the Kickstarter I was following. Because it's usually the art that grabs me. Because usually when people and companies do Kickstarters, it's hey, here's the art we're presenting. The cover art is usually, not always, but almost always, like final or near final iteration of the cover art. Right. This was completely different.
Wow.
I like this art is much better now.
Well, that's
the art
good.
They used may be for Volume 2 or Volume 3.
Yeah, I mean that's good. I mean, there's last minute art replacements can always be a crapshoot, especially for a cover. There's a couple times where in retrospect, I backed a couple that was special edition covers, but then come to find out that the normal cover looks so much better. And wish that I went with the
I don't like
regular
special
cover.
edition covers. I have yet to find one special edition cover that excited me more than the regular edition cover.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's rare. I mean, but still, it's just you're paying a couple extra bucks for something that just a little bit better. But it's every once in a while it does give a little bit of an extra shine or gloss to it. But there was a few times where I just went with let's just go with the regular cover because it's better.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But yeah, they have beautiful art. I mean, listeners can't see it, but I'm sharing my screen with Scott, and I mean, just look at that cover.
That's awesome. And this is prime podcasting. This is why you listen to us.
Yeah, I know.
No, but it is a beautiful cover, and we'll put a link.
We will.
To it in the description. But no, that is definitely an evocative cover. And if I saw that in a store, it would definitely, just without question, pick that up and page through it.
Oh yeah, it just screams what I was catching in the first 30 pages, like the little bit of background and and just everything. So yeah, I'm super excited for it.
Cool.
So what have you gotten? I know you've gotten a few things.
Well, I've gotten a few things. I've thankfully have been busy work-wise, because that's been kind of leading to both of us just kind of bouncing off the walls trying to record.
Yeah,
and but so I mean, my gaming has been a bit more involved. But things that I've got, I've recently received my a box from the UK, which was my Cthulhu hack fulfillment.
Okay.
I'll be doing it. I haven't opened it yet because I'll be doing an unboxing of that. Because Paul Baldowski is fantastic and he deserves as much attention as I can provide to him. But and then another one arrived, which I didn't realize, which came out in blue, was Eric Bloat's Old School Essentials. Speaking of Old School Essentials,
right?
Treatment of his Dark Places and Demogorgons game. So
I didn't back that.
Yeah, I did for two reasons. One, as I was interesting to see the old School Essentials take on it. I mean, I know if you know the rules for the original game, it's not going to be much different because it is kind of the rules for the original game is still an OSR type game, but also because it's Eric Bloat's kind of one of those people that personally. He's kind of like Levi Combs. He's such a great guy, such a nice guy, and if I'm in the position to back something when it comes out, I usually do. So, but we'll see. It's and also for me, Dark Places and Demogorgons is a little bit special, simply because the setting that it takes place in, the J-Town, Jeffersontown, is actually it's renamed, but it is a real place in Kentucky where my brother lives, and I've been there many, many times. I'm intimately familiar with the area, and in fact, that's where I spent the entire week before going to Gen Con that one year. So the places that he describes, the railway bridge and all the other places, I've been there, and there's nothing like playing within a game that takes place somewhat within the real world that you're familiar with it, so that you don't have to worry or struggle about creating a scene because you are just describing what
reality.
You've seen.
Yeah.
So, but I did get one more thing that I actually opened, and that was from Limithron. That was a Pirate Borg set of goodies. Yeah, after they became available for retail, I've seen it at a local game store, and I almost picked it up.
Okay.
And of course, it's available on Amazon and other places. But the one thing that I found out is the new printing doesn't come with the fold-out map of the Dark Caribbean. And I'm like, well, I want the map. I'm a map guy, and and I'm not saying that they're wrong for doing it.
Wait, the new book doesn't come with it?
At least not in the retail aspect. There was no map in the books that I saw, and I paid.
Hold on, now I gotta look because my new copy's somewhere.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. So while Keith is looking, I will entertain you with a limerick. There once was a man from Nantucket. Oh, he's back.
I'm back. Well, hold on. Okay, so I got a book here. I got to see if this is... Oh, that's first printing. That's why.
Okay.
Map.
Yeah.
Okay. Meh.
No, but they also say it on their website that it doesn't come with the map, I believe. So
guess I'm not getting rid of my first printing.
No, don't. But the good news is the first printing is available, or still available, I should say. But it is the original printing that has the little sensitivity, questionable description in their book for a monster or NPC, one of those things. But they do provide you with a sticker if you would like to replace it with the proper naming. But they don't force it into the book. They give it to you, and they also give you the new card if you're buying the card deck, which I did. So I don't have it all here. I'm not, but because I was supposed to play it last night. But it's all the little leaflets, all of the little pamphlet games. There was one that they didn't have that was sold out. I don't remember what it was.
Was it
but
Dark
I think
Tides?
Possibly that. Maybe that's probably what it was. But it was one. So I grabbed everything else, and
I just have the core book. That's all I have. I didn't buy the cards. I didn't do any of that stuff.
So got all of that, and it's wonderful. All of the pamphlet games are fantastic. I mean, some are strictly just little fold out pamphlet games, so they all come well illustrated with wonderful maps. The one thing that I got was called another thing that came with it was a full naval battle adventure, or one of these were. So you get a full naval combat scenario, you get a
Nice.
large adventure, and then there was another one which was like an introductory adventure. So because the adventure in the book is a great adventure, but it's a long one far as
it is.
Yeah. So if you're looking for just a con game of Pirate Borg and you don't want to, create your own game, you've got a nice little pamphlet game to that looks like maybe 3-ish hours, I would say. Maybe could be 4, depending on how much you want them to explore. But it also walks you through, walks the GM through the process. So it's kind of one of like these real intro games. And then of course, the wonderful map that came with the book and all that stuff. So it's still available, but none of this stuff is available anywhere. So all the extras in the bells and whistles, you got to get through Limithron as far as I know. And it got here quick, and it's beautiful. I mean, the book is fantastic, and just full of all sorts of goodness. So that aside, gaming wise, I recently got to play in my Hyperborea game. We're almost on year 4 of that campaign with Andy Markham.
Wow!
And we are on a wondrous adventure as we are trying to find the lost city of Atlantis.
Oh,
and
okay.
So we are currently, most of our characters are level 8, level 9, so we're in high-end adventures for Hyperborea, which means high-end death. But I'm playing a necromancer within the game and just having wonderfully devilish, evil, good time within that.
Fantastic.
And that's, let's see, what else? I think that's about it. I'm still continuing on with the GURPS game that I'm playing with our patron Pat. Having a good time with that. Unfortunately, there's a game this weekend that I'm probably gonna have to miss because I got family stuff to do on Saturday that afternoon. So that'll be unfortunate. And still chugging along with Dr. Mitch's Warhammer game with Crew and Company that you know so well. And again,
when's the scheduled ending of that campaign? 2030?
If I had a clear idea where we are, I could probably give you an idea, but I don't know. Because all right, so I've read some of the books, right? So I have a general idea of what each one is, right?
Right.
So in Enemy Within, you're dealing with this, with Power Behind the Throne, and so on. I don't know, because we are so off the rails. I couldn't tell you if we're still in the first book or if we're in the fourth book. Who knows? But we're
only Doc knows,
right? And we're having a good time doing it. Well, maybe.
You know what? As long as you're having a good time, that's all that matters, man.
Yeah,
that is all that matters.
So that's about it. I mean, and there may be some other things, but we're running long on this introduction. So we do have a wonderful interview coming up that I mentioned, which is whom?
Alex.
Yeah.
James Droucker.
Well, you didn't say Alex's last name.
Well, Alex is famous.
Yeah, Alex
and James's last name you butcher, so I have to say it.
Did Alex tell you to just address him by his first name from here on out? I will be known as Alex only.
Because Alex is world famous. Everybody knows Alex. Plus, their names are iterated in the main segment of this episode. So
yeah. So
but it's Alex Guillotte and James Droucker.
Yes, and we have a wonderful chat regarding their game, and likewise have a nice little discussion about Alex's Grindhouse. Jesus,
I was waiting for you to just keep spinning your wheels. This was great.
Well, the beauty of editing will fix that.
But yes, we talk about their new collaborative effort for their Grindhouse Volume 4. Yeah. And we talk about Grindhouse as a genre. And we just have a great conversation. We kind of run the gamut. Some stuff that's parallel and ancillary to Grindhouse. It just kind of runs the gamut. It's a great conversation, and I think listeners are going to love it.
Absolutely. Well, let's get on into that then.
Let's do it. Hey, listeners, welcome back to our main segment of tonight's episode. In the studio tonight, we have Alex Guillotte and James Droucker. James, did I get that right?
You got it right.
Hell yeah. Scott, take that.
Oh, don't worry. I'll butcher it eventually.
Yes, you will.
That's my job. We've got some special guests. We have some returning guests, which is always nice. And on top of it all, the cherry on top, it's also two good friends of ours, which makes the conversation a lot more casual. We're not as wound up and tense as we tend to be if we don't know the people, because we like to be respectful, but we don't have to respect you guys because you're our friends.
We are very disrespectful individuals, so that's fine.
Yes.
Yes.
Feeling is mutual.
So Alex and James are here tonight, and we are going to talk with them about their wonderful game, Grindhouse Volume 4. As the title says, it's the 4th edition of the Grindhouse series, spearheaded by Alex himself. And it is a Call of Cthulhu game, and it is based upon the Grindhouse aesthetic. And for those who aren't familiar with that, we'll probably go into a little bit of detail later as to what constitutes a Grindhouse game. And we're going to talk with Alex and James about both of their adventures in there, kind of how they came up with the idea, what they're about. So fair warning, since this is a discussion about adventures, there might be some spoilers. So just want to give you a heads up on that. We will not be time coding it because that's not our style, but
Nope.
Just be warned. There may be another spoiler shout out as we go in. But before we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to just talk with both Alex and James and get an idea of their background within the tabletop RPG creative part of the industry, discuss some of the games that they've worked on before, and and see what led them to essentially meet under a moonlit evening along the Seine in Paris, and join them together to make this wonderful marriage and of creation that is the Grindhouse Volume 4. How's that for an intro?
I like
Too much truth.
I know.
Holy crap.
Wow.
Top that,
style.
John
Lot of
Hook
style.
and Seth Gorkowski. Thank you guys for coming and slumming it with us today. We really appreciate it. So
I do have one caveat. I want
Yes.
to throw it in up front.
please do.
So for everybody listening, just to be clear and for transparency, I worked on this project with Alex and James as the editor on this book, because that's one of my side hustles, is a freelance editor. So I know a lot of you listeners already know that. Scott's going to take kind of point on a lot of the discussions and leading a lot of the conversation tonight. I'll be part of the conversation, but because I am more intimately familiar with all of the material, I just want to be transparent up front that I was the editor. So I'm going to kind of stay to the back a little bit in the conversation, just to keep a little bit of distance. So that's
Excellent.
all I wanted to say. I'll leave it back to you guys.
We are shills if we're nothing else. And,
True story. I am for hire.
Yes, exactly. If and to be fair, if Keith didn't have this game, we would still be having them on to discuss it.
True story.
But now we get to nitpick if we found anything, after the fact. So James Droucker. Droucker. There you go. Welcome.
You hear that, John Hook?
So we're not going to go.
Flack.
We're not going to go over the origin story of you guys coming into RPGs, as I know you've done that before. But for those who don't know you, James, what is your essential background within the industry as far as games that you've worked on, projects you've been a part of, just so people can get an idea of where you come from, and also when the conversation is over, they can go out and seek out these games too.
My first project in the industry was with the Sons of the Singularity, which I think Keith also edited that. So
I did
joint
not.
history
For the
goes-
record, I did not.
You did a little bit of editing on.
Well,
on,
I did a
Journal
little
Machine.
tiny chapter. That's it, and it wasn't yours.
Yes,
Oh,
but regardless, that was my first dip of the toe in. I've always been a writer,
mhm.
but I remember when I wrote technically, when I wrote my first scenario, it was the first time I ever ran Call of Cthulhu, and it was Call of Cthulhu D20. I wrote it as if it was a professional scenario. I did it's like the proper fonts for everything, and some layout and a few images. And I don't know why I did that, because I never published it, and I lost it, unfortunately, which
I
bothers
know
me.
why. I know why. Nerd. Carry on.
Well, yes, big nerd. But beyond that, I'd written a lot of short stories, stuff like that. Did some journalism, and then about 5-6 years ago, I managed to get in contact with the Sons of the Singularity, because a friend of theirs was going to be bringing their book convention that I was running, and so I started up a friendship with them, and that was when they had just started writing Guillotte Machine, but they had released Sassoon Files, and that was the one that got burned in China. So it's interesting story to go look up, but I wasn't involved with the Sassoon Files other than helping to promote it after. And I basically just said to Jason Sheets, who's one of their leads, do you maybe need somebody to do some writing? And he's like, sure, make me a few
proposals.
Proposals. Why am I mumbling mouth on that? So yeah, I wrote up a few things, and they selected the one that I put the least amount of effort into, and that was The Fate of the Kaong, which is in Journal d'Indochine Volume 2. And that was, I mean, it was a wonderful experience. I mean, they're great guys to write for. After that, I accidentally got involved with Mark Grindhagen's Lost Lorne project, which is still trying to find its feet.
I hear it's lost.
It's lost. It's lost in Lorne. No, it's still going, and they're still working on stuff for it. I'm just not with the team anymore. I've moved on, but I had a lot of and again, I'm not trying to malign it at all. I had a lot of fun working on that, and I got to discover a love of world building with that project, because I wasn't writing scenarios. I was developing characters and patience and lore and stuff for this world concept they had, and it was an absolute blast. And I wouldn't kind of give it away for anything. So, but when I left that, just finding other things to work on. I worked with a gentleman in Florida named Andrew Frinkle on a few 5e projects. One called Karen Bray, which is kind of a Scottish feeling, old timey kind of horror setting for 5e fantasy horror. I obviously I identify as a horror writer, so my stuff was very horror forward. And then he did another one, which is more modern day demons, that he just finished kickstarting. That's probably getting out to backers now, called Demon Age. Oh. And then like about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, is when I spoke to Alex for the first time. It was in November, right before I was about to start my Christmas rush, because I work for Postal Service, and Christmas really sucks for us.
Yeah.
And I sort of dropped the idea to him of maybe doing something for my convention conversation we had, and that didn't happen. And then after that, just didn't happen, which is fine. I sort of said, hey, if you need anybody to maybe help write some more Grindhouse stuff, I'd really be interested in doing that. And I think the initial response, I almost felt like it was kind of like, oh, sure, yeah, I'll call you. So I was like, okay, well, that happened. It's fine. It's not that you're rude, Alex. I mean, not at all. And so then a few weeks later, you sort of messaged me and say, hey, can you send me some proposals? And I'm like, okay. And
hold on, I think we need to tease this out a little bit more. Getting like soap opera-y, or Just kidding.
Not at all.
Press on.
Not at all. He was Alex was wonderful to deal with, even before I was doing the scenarios. I mean, when it came to him, kind of just cold, asking him to talk at my convention, it's like I'd heard that he homeschools his kids, and I was wondering if maybe he used role-playing games as part of how he teaches them and stuff. And he's like, well, no, really. So that I could come on the panel, I'd have something to say, but I don't know if I'd have enough. So that's kind of verbatim what he said to me, and we just moved on from there. And 4 or 5 months to write Nazi Bikers Must Die.
So 4 to 5 months to write it.
Well, remember, 3 of those months was my Christmas rush. So
no. That's not. I mean, I just clarifying that. That's not any sort of a slight, because I tend to subscribe to. I think it's Dennis Detweiler who tends to say your game is done when it's done. So and of course
there's always that school of writing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Alex never rushed me, and I felt like I was really taking my time on things, and it felt really, really bad. But it was never an issue. So it's like, okay. And I mean, obviously, any other fires going on. I mean, he was working on Viral at the time, or at least he had released it, and they were really pushing and promoting it. So he had things going on. So, I mean, it's like what's going on now. I mean, we're working on new things, and I've got Grindhouse stuff in the chamber, but he's really focusing on some current projects and stuff like that. So I haven't been bothering him too much with my ideas, other than a few random, text messages. It's like, oh, how about this? Just me making sure okay, just don't annoy the Alex.
So Alex, is James annoying you? Let's chase this thread a little. I'm just playing. No.
Yeah, no.
He's only changed his phone number twice, but I mean that's just because to get a better deal.
No, I mean, I've had to deal with annoying people, and he doesn't even make it into the top 100. So
Good to know.
Yay! Where do I rank? Number 4? I mean, what? No, just kidding.
No. It's more about having as he was saying, there's other stuff going on all the time. And so I'm never short for something to work on. Whether it's one of the things from my compost pile, which is basically I get an idea, alligators on skis, and I throw that in there or something. Just weird. Something weird comes to my head that I think would be interesting, and it goes into this big file that I made of just concepts that may or may not come to fruition someday.
That scares me that I'm going to see some of those someday.
Yeah.
No. I get it, because a lot of times when inspiration strikes, you have to put some attention to it and focus on it without distraction, or at least that's kind of how it is for me. And I know this is kind of like, it's an old grind, but the kind of ADHD dyslexic type thing. It's like, if something comes, it needs my immediate attention, and if any distractions get in my way, it's going to be lost. Or I get angry. It's like, can you do it? No, I'm doing this. I have to get this done now. You don't understand. Don't take this personally.
It'll be lost forever.
Right.
Yeah.
So James, that's fantastic. I mean, it's you've kind of, well, I think it's by your own words that you've kind of strong-armed your way into to several of these things successfully, and again, that's no slight. That's what works. That's that's kind of why I'm doing this podcast now, because I showed up at the Midchester Arms one night and just kind of sat there silently until I showed up again after drinking 3 rum and cokes, and then the world changed. So
and here we are 3 years later.
Yeah.
So Alex, yourself, you've been creating games for some time now, and so why don't you give the listeners an idea of kind of what was the onus for you getting into the creative side of the hobby? Cure.
I mean, in reality, I've been creating stuff for a long time. Like back in the day, I was making, making stuff, photocopying it and putting it in the local game shop for a quarter, for them to sell to people who come in, that sort of thing. Not including those, of course. But with just Drive Through RPG, I started doing D&D first.
Okay.
Started doing some 3rd edition stuff, and then when 5th edition came along, I was doing some of those things. And I mean, I've always been more interested in the horror aspect of things. So I've always wanted to do Call of Cthulhu scenarios, but until Miskatonic Repository came along, it wasn't likely. But once that hit, I thought, well, the first thing I can do is I have these series of environment books that were written by DBJ, Dave Brandon Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of these would work really well for, bringing some atmosphere to, Call of Cthulhu. So I started putting those together. And then I had run this one shot called The Pipeline, for just some friends on, online or whatever. And I thought, you know what, maybe I'll just put that together and put it in the back as kind of a little extra thing on the Arctic one, give people a little bonus sort of thing. And so I started writing that up and adding more details, and now I'm not like, I gotta do maps now, and now we need this. And pretty soon it was like the pipeline outweighed the original, environment book by about 10-1.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I say, well, I guess I gotta flip that around now. And I'm releasing the pipeline with an appendix that has the environmental stuff in it. I still ultimately released the environmental ones, converted them to 7th edition Call of Cthulhu and released those as well, all new art and some new things in it. But the pipeline was really the first big thing I did specifically for Call of Cthulhu.
Mm-hmm.
Which interestingly is not Grindhouse. It's definitely more, homage to like John Carpenter, and that sort of thing, because it's mid 80s era. But I mean, I've always loved Grindhouse. Grindhouse is sort of what got me into horror in general, because I grew up renting VHS tapes with, Evil Dead was by far one of the first sort of big ones that caught my eye. But even before that, I was watching things like Race with the Devil, which
Yes.
If you haven't seen that, that's an amazing movie. And anyone who's seen any of these can see little hints of some of these things in some of my work, Texas Chainsaw Massacre and all those. So I grew up, watching Grindhouse movies. And so I really, really love that style, that sort of grittiness, that sort of raw, that raw take on horror. But not just that, but the protagonists in those type of things tend to be just regular people, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not trained heroes. They're not epic assassins. They're not John Wick. They're truck drivers. They're they're the guy who works at the corner store. They're regular people who get pulled into these terrible situations and desperately try to survive.
Yeah. No, there's
that's kind of what I like about that style.
There's something to be said about the unsupervised children of the 80s, which most of us, are, and the established effects of being unsupervised and having a rental card to the local mom and pop VHS store. Because I know I was just like that. My friends and I would be always going there all the time, picking up the same movies that you were talking about, and then some, discovering, the whole Hammer horror part of it, the trauma, Toxic Avengers, they all kind of, and of course the piece de resistance, the stuff, or or the one day when your friend comes home and says, man, I got it. Got what? I got Faces of Death. Oh shit, man. We're gonna have a sleepover and we're gonna watch it after the folks go to bed, just, and all of that just, lays the foundation for this. So, and you're right. It can be definitely be seen, the influence, and anyone who has that influence, you can see it. And whether it be, their novels, their games, whatever, you can definitely tell someone who was part of that aesthetic. And so what comes after Pipeline? Because that got a bit of success, but it
did okay. It did okay, although it did definitely picked up once I started doing more, right? Like the next one I worked on with Ian Christensen, which was Highway of Blood, which is I love all of the ones I make.
Yeah.
But that is still my personal favorite. It's like it just has a, it just has that special place in my heart. Maybe because it was the first Grindhouse we did, but also it's just I just love the whole overall aesthetic of it. That
Your little abattoir of love.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's on a side of, this isn't even a pitch for me, but it's if it's not really a rival podcast, so I don't feel bad saying it, is the Apocalypse Players.
Yeah.
Yes.
They just recently did a playthrough of it, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I've been listening to it. It's pretty good.
It is. They not only are the players good, but they do this they do this great sort of all this sort of filler around it, but filler is not the right word because it's rich with lore. You know, they have individual discussions. It's really like a radio drama almost, the way it's put together.
More atmospherics.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And they make some great modifications to the story, which I love. And that's one of the great pleasures of doing this too. It's like once you put this stuff out there, and if people start running it online, especially, you get to see what other people do with it, and you get to see them do things that you never thought of before, which is amazing. When I heard that another podcast was going to be running it, where they're going to play professional wrestlers.
Yes.
Going to Abattoir, it's like, oh my god, that is the best thing I've ever heard in my life.
It's there's something about it that's inspirational, because it's kind of my introduction to both you and Ian when we got into the game, and of course we we ran it on James's stream, but there was just the fact that it's a sandbox Call of Cthulhu game. But what makes it different, and maybe just a little bit more malleable in that aspect, is just it's kind of almost like a true sandbox. People will tell you Nyarlathotep is a sandbox, but it is in a sense, but really it's not, because if you steer too far to the left, it can go off the rails very easily. Whereas in this particular game, if it goes off the rails, it makes it even better, because you never know what's going to expect. And just about everyone that I've seen, who, the people that you've mentioned that I'm aware of, myself included, and other people that I've seen either just mentioning it online at just like a social media feed, or they're doing a podcast or a stream of it, everyone makes it their own, which is fantastic. And then they add their little bits to it to make it personal, and it just continues on and on and on. So so hats off to that. I mean, it is well deserving of it being your abattoir of love. But it also leads into your Grindhouse verse, which your other games that followed suit kind of exist in the same universal settings of this gritty, grungy, wonderful 1970s aesthetic, where you're not modern day Cthulhu. You have a little bit of new technology, like as opposed to the 1920s classic setting, but even the 70s tech isn't that technical. And then you have it set out in, the Badlands of, the Southwest, where, let's face it, even in 1970, technology might as well be 1930 in some of those parts. So it's not like it's not like you're gaining an advantage of it being modern day. So,
as you point out, like I've heard Highway Blood described almost as like a source book, and they're right. I put a lot into the setting, the NPCs. I mean, you could run a lot of different things there once you were done with the original sort of idea.
Yeah.
But that's what led into Carnival of Madness, which was my vain attempt to write something shorter. Because
it's like 3 pages shorter. It's not much shorter.
It's not. That's right. That's the vain part. Yeah. I did try though. Well, my thought was like, okay, well, I'm gonna really limit myself. Okay, so it's gonna be a single location, and it takes place in a single night. How could it go wrong?
I remember playtesting that.
Damn carnival.
I remember playtesting that, and I swear we spent a good hour like going to the different carnival games and looking for funnel cake. Yeah. And when it was all said and done, I think the one takeaway you guys got from it was, maybe we should limit the amount of games and options, because they're wasting too much time on this crap. They need to get to the horror.
I think when we play tested it, I think we got stuck on the duck pond or some shit like
Yeah.
that. So, I mean, it's par for the course.
Yeah.
And then I had
Yeah.
to edit it. So, I didn't do much
Yeah.
in the way of helping to trim the fat because it's so good.
Well,
Yeah.
and that in turn led to the smaller sort of Grindhouse format, which was the Grindhouse, which I was going to be even a smaller book. Again, you see this more of this attempt to limit myself.
Right.
So I said, okay, we're going to do a 6x9 format now. So now I'm really limited, and we're going to and I want to put two of them in this one little book. So it's like I can't write it too much, and so that was the genesis of the small sort of Grindhouse format ones.
Right.
It also speaks of Grindhouse because, again, if you look at the origin of the Grindhouse movies, they were basically meant to just like, hey, here's $10,000 and 500 gallons of blood, make a movie, and that's what they would do. And then it would go into the theater and they would literally grind out these movies. They called it a Grindhouse because of the sound the projector made. It was like, you'd have this sort of constant grinding sound. But they were made to be quick and cheap. You know what I mean? Get butts in seats, watching this horrible stuff. And so I thought the smaller format and making them sort of very brief sort of leaned into that as well, right? I didn't want to make them, I didn't want to make them bad. I didn't want to make them terrible.
Right.
But I definitely wanted to make them leaner than I.
Now, do you feel you've achieved that with in the Grindhouse series? Volumes 1 through 4 now, and there's a couple of specials. Do you feel you've trimmed it down, kept the grittiness and dirty in the classic sense of a Grindhouse, but yet kept it fast paced and in that in the aesthetic, the true aesthetic of Grindhouse?
Yeah, I mean, I might be a little too close to it, but it's definitely helped to be more concise. It's definitely helped sort of trim the excess off, and keep definitely keep it simpler. And even within that, though, there are some that I definitely like more than others. I did a summer camp one. I did it's kind of leaning into tropes. There's one that takes place on this little island. There's a great one that's sort of a very sort of loose sequel to Highway of Blood, which is Jackknife. Takes place in the same area, involves a little bit of crossover, and that's a fun one. Yeah, we tried to go like all over the place with the different types, and then when I talked to James, he had this idea for Nazi Bikers Must Die, which it doesn't get more kind of Grindhouse than that.
Yeah,
that's
that's where it really started. Is like because I tried to envision like a poster in my head, and if you've seen the Grindhouse posters, exactly what they look like with the garish title across the front and some woman scantily clad with blood on her running away from somebody. This is the image I had in my head. And when I first went to Alex about it, I was like, have you done anything with bikers yet? And he's like, no, I don't think, not really. I mean, obviously you could fit it in some of the different ones. And then, and like, going to, because one of the seminal Grindhouse films is the Nazi She-Wolves or something like that. I can't remember the exact name.
It was something of the SS, Nazi.
Something of the SS. Anyway,
but like, of the SS or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Exactly.
Oh my God. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, and so, I that was one of the first things that came to mind. And said, "Well, have we done anything with Nazis yet?" And I was like, "Oh God, no, we haven't done anything with Nazis." So I'm like, "Okay, hear me out, Nazis and bikers." And he's like, "I love it." And then the added twist would be that your protagonists are bikers as well. So it's bad guys versus worse guys. Essentially, was kind of his initial. He's like, I like the idea of having bad guys be our protagonists, and I'm like, I love it. I can run with that. So, and
well, I mean, you look at something like Dusk Till Dawn, which it's a more modern film, but it's definitely Grindhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
God,
yeah.
And that was a huge inspiration for like the second half of Nazi Bikers Must Die.
Sure, because
honest,
the two protagonists in that are two awful people, one of them worse than the other,
Oh.
and yet they're the ones you're rooting for by the time things go to hell. And and that's kind of that's definitely what I saw in Nazi Bikers Must Die, that sort of aesthetic, going into that. Yeah.
Now, as somebody that's a little more familiar with the book, I'm having edited it, and I know what the contents of Nazi Bikers Must Die is all about, and I know what the story threads entail. Have you guys, now that it's been published for several months now, have you guys run into any pushback or any flack given that, the title of, that scenario, Nazi Bikers Must Die? I mean, obviously, the only Nazi, the only good Nazi is when you've, a dead Nazi or you punch a Nazi in the face kind of thing.
Yeah.
But have you guys run into any flack with including that theme in a scenario?
I haven't heard anybody complain about it.
Okay.
No.
Just
curious.
curious.
So far it's been pretty good.
Okay.
Now we did put in an additional, sort of warning up front about that.
Disclaimer,
Yeah, just to let people know what our intentions were going into it, and that we're going to be potentially touching on some real things that happened indirectly, and like James wrote, if you have a problem with punching Nazis, then maybe this isn't for you.
Right.
Right. That's kind of where I was going with the line of questioning.
Right. I was thinking more, have you gotten an email from Tipper Gore? Because of the
PMRC still a thing?
You might have to include a little thing in the bottom to identify who she is, because we're I know we're old, but hopefully I have some younger listeners.
Yeah, I'll put the Wikipedia page.
If that happened, we quote it and put it on the back of the book.
Man, I would love to see someone burn one of my scenarios. I would love to see some 10 preachers,
but you know what I mean, because the Grindhouse. One of the things about Grindhouse is it does lean on the the exploitive aspects of it, but that's of its time. But that's also kind of what makes it what it is. And it's and you mentioned earlier that there's certain tropes that you lean on, and Grindhouse wouldn't exist without tropes. I mean, it's those tropes are meant to be used and enjoyed in the theme of it all, and it's meant to just have a good time watching these ridiculous movies with these horrible plots and bad special effects, and just is that red jelly? That's not. I mean, just
that's not blood. That's watered jelly.
I've been watching way too much Red Letter Media as they're reviewing a lot of these old movies, these old crappy movies, and it's just fabulous. But yeah, so nothing like that, right? I know it's gamers tend to be a little bit more open to certain things because they're aware that it's done tongue in cheek, or it's part of the game aesthetic. You're not glamorizing it, but nothing of that sort either. Well, that's
especially with something like this, where it's a very sort of fine line we're walking, because some of the stuff they did in the 70s was just offensive. Like it was terrible in a different kind of way. And so we don't want to veer into that, obviously.
No.
But
it's about the spirit of what we're making.
Yeah.
The spirit of Grindhouse, as opposed to just the content, which I think is more important than the content.
Yeah. It's like D&D is technically sort of a medieval sort of setting, right? And yet, there are too many scenarios where people are dumping their waste out of their windows into the gutter, and
in my game they do.
Well, okay, there you go.
I mean, that's
the exception that proves the rule.
I mean, that's my scenario. Waste not, want not. I mean, I've been reading my files. Carry on.
But even in Call of Cthulhu, most of the scenarios don't include like necessarily hard racism, that was obviously rampant, and just sexism. Not great.
Really in terms of racism, mine is the Nazi Bikers Must Die is the closest we really got to that. So.
Okay, so Scott's come back from his Scott had to take care of a quick family matter, so we're gonna cut all that out. But We've had a great conversation without Scott. He won't hear any of this. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm used to it.
Interestingly, the only real pushback I have had, and it was very recently. It was someone who posted a. It wasn't a review. It was a message on Drive Through RPG, asking me, basically implying that my stuff really wasn't Grindhouse because I wouldn't include, things like rape.
Yeah.
And I really tried to explain that, well, right. We don't want that to take, we don't want player characters to have to either experience that, witness that, or,
just deal with it in any way.
Right.
And nobody should have to in a game. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
Right. At the end of the day, this is a game. We're supposed to be at the table to have fun. And, that's just not in any way.
I saw that, and I don't know what movies he saw growing up, but he said 90% of Grindhouse had that aspect to it. And I'm just like,
and I think he further went on to say that it wasn't a Grindhouse scenario unless it included those classic, like, rapey type trope, rapey sexualization type tropes. And I was just like, whoa, because we all saw it, we all read it, and we were all like taken aback by this person's comments.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest though. Yes. Grindhouse films did have some of those elements.
Yeah.
Certainly they leaned into the sex stuff for sure.
But it wasn't, that particular aspect wasn't a cornerstone. No. It's not like,
No.
But yeah, I mean, the more, sexual aspects, yes. I mean, it was the 70s. There's girls in dolphin shorts and, braless white tees running around screaming their heads off, and that was a lot of part of the aesthetic of it.
But that even went beyond movies. That was in
that was the 70s.
That was the 70s. Yeah. I mean, just think back to like car adverts, commercials on TV. Evil Knievel, right? And his entourage of women in the Daisy Duke shorts in the halter tops tied just below their boobs. And I mean, that was the 70s. I'm not saying it's apropos for 2023, but that was the norm then. It's not the norm nor acceptable today.
Well, and even that we haven't shied away from that much. Like we did one of our Grindhouse scenarios called First Night, which involves a sorority staying the night in a haunted house, basically.
Yeah.
And we don't go into anything that's anyone would consider inappropriate, but someone's gonna when they play it.
So yes, they could, because I've read it. Yeah, because I've proofread that scenario for you. They could if they wanted to.
Yeah,
right.
And their group was accepting of those that realm, but that is not something that, and I can say this because I have knowledge of it. That is not something that you are inviting people to do either.
No,
right.
Well, what would you say are some of the standard tropes and cornerstones of Grindhouse? If someone's going to sit down and go, okay, I want to make a Grindhouse scenario, what would be, a few of the things you would suggest to them that they would want to focus upon to kind of give it that recognizable Grindhouse feel to it?
Well, I think in addition to like sort of the atmospheric tropes, music and just general 70s stuff, right? Like it can really enhance a game if you're playing 70s music and you have that sort of ambiance going on. But as far as Grindhouse goes, I think that a lot of it is just the brutality of it. It's the sort of, I'm trying to think of a better way to say it.
Yeah,
you might have to edit some of this, but
that's fine.
I think
I'll clean it up.
Maybe going to look for the whole. kind of like an over the top kind of sense.
It's a
For
spectacle.
everything.
Sure.
Everything is amped up because your action is over the top. The blood and violence is over the top.
You know what it's like? It's like Pulp, but in the opposite direction.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're starting with Call of Cthulhu as your base, and Pulp takes it one way, Grindhouse takes it the opposite direction.
Yeah.
It's potentially deadlier.
Mm-hmm.
And this sort of leans into my idea that I would love to put together eventually an actual Grindhouse book in the vein of Pulp Cthulhu, but for Grindhouse, where when you shoot a car, it blows up. That's what it does. You know what I mean?
Which totally fits the motif.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, you have thugs and mooks running around that, you know, if you take a swing at them with a baseball, you kill them with one hit. You know, these are the sort of things that you get into. By the time you're done, your characters should ideally be covered in blood and half mad from what they've experienced.
Oh, while a rocking soundtrack is playing in the background,
Of course.
or something of that sort.
100%.
Yeah,
Or Cat Stevens.
yeah. Well, that's at the end. That's at the end when she gets into the car, starts to drive away, and she turns around, and oh my God, he's in the back. And
it could be the beginning too, as you're trying to lull them into a false sense of security.
Yeah. Well, because as a spoiler for Nazi bikers and stuff, because I come from a very cinematic place when I'm writing, and I presented this idea to Alex, and I said, okay, right, just as things start to get really, really bloody and there's some hyper violence going on in the story, I'm going to have a jukebox come on with Cat Stevens' father and son playing in the background. And I imagined it as a movie scene because, like, just having all this horribly violent stuff happening. Well, Cat Stevens is calmly crooning some fatherly ballad in the background, and there's I love the counterpoint of it, and it's something that you'd see in like a Quentin Tarantino movie. He would totally do something like that, and that's sort of where I'm going with it. So
humor is another part of it, in some various degrees. I mean, some can be subtle, some can be over the top, like Evil Dead 2, I mean, it's Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. Generally the same movie, but they go in different directions at a certain point.
Now, would you call, so since we're on the topic of obviously, the Grindhouse and the aesthetic of the Grindhouse, so would you call I don't think it's like classic Grindhouse because it's obviously not over the top, like gory or anything, but would you call something like The Warriors? Would you say that 1979 classic falls into that aesthetic?
I guess it could, because it was definitely kind of on the low budget side, right? It was that.
Oh yeah,
and it definitely had that sort of exploitative value to it, which is
it's missing the over the top violence, though.
Sure. Yeah.
It doesn't feel as cheap, though.
Right.
No.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just gonna say if they had leaned into the violence more, then it definitely would have been 100%.
Right. Okay. I'm just trying to help listeners, that may not be fully aware of the Grindhouse, right?
Yeah.
Try to kind of find those guardrails.
I think from a historical perspective, The Warriors is a perfect example of a film that is kind of born of the whole Grindhouse aesthetic and time, because it comes at the end of the 70s, but it definitely has, you can feel the DNA of Grindhouse films in it, and because the Grindhouse films have become so popular and stuff, the big studios are saying, okay, well, we got to make movies that are sort of like this but not nearly as exploitative. Maybe
but let's see if we can get a wider audience for these.
Right,
and
a little less exploitative, a little less gore, but kind of keep some of the feel. Yeah, I'm in agreement with James on that one.
Yeah. It does have that production aspect, where it looks like they may not have had permits for a lot of the places they filmed in New York. It was all done in the middle of the night. There was no one around, and that's another thing that you find with a lot of these, especially the old ones of where it just granted, someone helped produce it, but they may not have done it by the book in a lot of that regard. So,
right.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
Okay, so just one quick thing.
Yes.
The best description I've so far been able to come up with for Grindhouse is from the back of the book, the Grindhouse books, and it says, "These aren't your typical Call of Cthulhu scenarios where some classy, well-dressed investigator sips tea and pores over leather books in some wood panel library. These are burning dumpsters of pure horror." Where a fleeing private investigator limps through some filthy back alley on a busted ankle, while a howling pack of mutants tries to beat them to death with the limbs of their dead friends.
that says it all. That speaks
It
volumes.
does. It does.
Yeah,
It does.
perfect.
So back to Grindhouse Volume 4. Can you give us just a general synopsis of the two scenarios that are in this book? I mean, I know Nazi bikers must die kind of says it all. I mean, even if you haven't read it, you kind of know, what's going to happen there. But is there a little little premise, James, that you can kind of give to just kind of give a general description of what it is without spoiling too much of it?
It's very like, because both scenarios in the book are kind of like courier style scenarios, which sort of has a good thread. Your protagonists, your heroes, quotes, are the Devil's Pistons, which are a biker gang, and they're sent to this small town to retrieve a book from a local bookseller. As you're wont to always expect, books in Call of Cthulhu are horribly, horribly dangerous things that should be run away from. Yeah. In searching for the book, they discover they're not the only ones looking for the book. There's a group of Nazi bikers led by an older Nazi who apparently at some point was part of the Reich, and chaos ensues, and some horrible things are called into being, and blood will flow.
Okay, well, one question though: do Nazis die?
God, yes.
I can confirm that.
I don't want to assume too much. I mean, I assume so, but yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
Cold as Hell, which is the other one.
Yeah.
It was interesting because I've always resisted writing anything that took place in a pre-existing Lovecraft setting.
Innsmouth or
in Innsmouth, right. Go, all the sort of places that everyone knows about. But for some reason, I decided to do Dunwich for a couple of reasons. That's where this one takes place. Number one, because I've always been having a fondness for Dunwich. Another sort of Grindhouse type movie was the Dunwich Horror that was made in 1971, which was Dean Stockwell was Wilbur Whateley, and I love that movie. That was another very inspirational one. But I love Dunwich, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to see what Dunwich looks like in the 70s. You know what I mean? It's bring it up to that time period. It's grown a bit. It kind of grew a little bit, and then it kind of died back a little bit, and as these little towns are prone to do. But the other reason I did it there was because it's briefly mentioned or potentially briefly mentioned in Carnival of Madness, where you have the option of playing the meddling kids as your PCs, and they were the next day they're supposed to be playing a gig in the Wayward Inn in Dunwich, and so that's where this takes place. And there's some this little kind of cool Easter egg on the wall when you go in there. This little bulletin board that has their little flyer on it, whatever. Like Nazi Bikers Must Die, this involves couriers who are going there to pick up an item that a local antiquarian has to bring to Miskatonic University, and it was uncovered in the basement of the Wayward Inn when they were doing renovations. As he said, wacky hijinks do ensue. But that one's definitely much more of a siege, I guess, sort of scenario where, as soon as the main protagonists are all in place, there's an outside threat, and of course it takes place on one of the coldest nights in on record, where it's into the minus double digits, and it's you can hear in the distance the ice of the Miskatonic River booming as it cracks from the cold. And it's again very, very sort of atmospheric, and it went with like this deep cold, and it gives them a little bit of isolation, but it also ties into what's going on. It's not my standard sort of style usually, but it definitely is definitely falls into that sort of grindhouse category. And both of them take place in bars.
Yeah.
And both of them take place in bars, which is cool. But one of the things that sort of ties in with these is the notion of this sort of courier network. And this is something that we're gonna start seeding into other scenarios as we go.
Oh.
Yeah.
The idea that there's a sort of underground network of couriers and sellers and buyers of mythos and mythos related books and artifacts and so
and
forth.
information,
right? So it's sort of this underground network, and took a while to come up with the name, but we finally settled on the Crossroads is what this is called.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes all the way back to the 1920s, where hobos would sometimes do this sort of thing, and hobo codes became part of this, and so there's this whole sort of organization evolving out of it. And I'd love to lean more into that as we go, to give people sort of an alternative for campaigns in the in the Grindhouse setting. Yeah. That I think that's something I'd like to see more of, people playing long-term campaigns set in the 1970s. And this gives them an option that's not Delta Green.
Well,
yeah.
The characters have to survive, though.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but see, they don't necessarily.
Yeah. Oh no.
Well, because
the network just plugged somebody new in.
I got a question though about the book. This book contains, and I don't know if this is in the other Grindhouse ones, because my memory sucks. But you in this one, due to the aspects of the scenario, you've included the driving rules, or modified driving rules. Are these the same driving rules that was in Highway of Blood, or are these different than what's in there?
They're pretty much the same. We modified them to suit the scenario, but they're pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So I figured we have people on motorcycles. Maybe we should include that as an option, because there are some possibilities for that.
Right.
Yeah.
And for those who aren't aware, it's originated in Highway of Blood. And for those who have played Call of Cthulhu or most RPGs, chase rules kind of either stink or they're boring. And the chase rules that came with Highway of Blood definitely give a lot of options and alternatives to make it a lot more interesting and a lot more cinematic. So,
amen, brother. Amen.
Applause for that. I mean, I still haven't met a 100%.
I think Vandelay's still stuck on the highway somewhere, or the back road. Right. I miss Vandelay.
The other thing I try to include in the Grindhouse books, especially, or the small ones at least, is to make the pre-gens. There's always pre-gens included, to make them as user friendly as possible, and that means trying to make them sort of gender neutral, so that people can take them and sort of add in their own personality if they want to. They can run it how they like. The only exceptions were the one book that had both First Night and Hellblock 5, which was because in a prison it's got to it's going to be all males, and that's why we sort of put those two together, because they were unique in that they were sort of very gender specific. Overall, we try to make them so that anyone could just sort of pick them up and use them. The other thing I wanted to do too was to give each of these potentially player characters something unique that they could do. Give them a special ability, because I kind of like that. It just makes them a little bit more interesting. And all of these are almost like little sort of experimental probes into what a Grindhouse book would look like.
Okay.
It's like, what can we have in this? So it's like these are all sort of like little experiments, I guess.
it makes it more interesting in this regards, because the other thing about Grindhouse is usually the protagonists are young people, teenagers up into their early 20s or whatever. So they're not really established, but it's still better than okay, you can be the jock or the cheerleader or the nerd or so on and so forth. But it makes it a little bit more interesting in the regards to the game to allow you to have these little special abilities, which is, also great, because everyone wants to be special before they get their head sliced off.
Yep. Well, I think, again, with the Grindhouse, these are heroic in their own dark ways characters, and because you're going from these movies of these people doing wild, over the top things, of course it fits, and that's what the player expects as well.
So just to give you an example, like in Cold as Hell, one of the characters has psychometry, which means they can touch something, and they can spend magic points in sand to glean something from it. So in Cold as Hell, for example, we have some pre-gens, and one of them has a special ability called psychometry, which is basically you touch something, you kind of get an impression from it. You spend a little bit of sanity, a little bit of magic points, and you might be able to glean something from it. Another one has brawler, which you can use a sturdy object like a chair or bottle as a weapon. The item is destroyed in the process, but you get some extra damage from it, that sort of thing. This one I specifically borrowed from Big Trouble in Little China, which is all in the reflexes, and so it's once per session they can catch something that should be uncatchable with a dex check, and if they get a hard success, they can throw it back instantly. So, and again, all of these are sort of would be great little moments, right? Another person is a contortionist that can pick locks, and so just little special abilities that aren't part of the sort of standard Call of Cthulhu scenario, but they're simple enough where I don't need to have a whole paragraph of description. Telling you what it does. It's pretty straightforward, and
it keeps the balance too. It's not like a total game changer. So, but it makes it that much better and more cinematic.
Did we do that with the bikers too? I don't remember.
I think it was less. I think we gave them they had signature weapons and stuff like that, but I don't necessarily know if they had specific.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right. That was signature weapons. That's what it was. We have crowbar, nunchucks.
Nunchucks and stuff, and so and give them skills that will come into play in terms of things coming into the environment and stuff. I think I leaned more into just giving I liked having kind of quirks that led to really cool gameplay moments, because I had one small scene where they come into a house and it's filled with Hummel figurines, and I have one NPC in particular who has a phobia of statues, and I don't allude any more to it than that, and it's more just to give the players a moment to have some fun with it, even if it's just I gotta get out of this room. And there's all sorts of little bits like that kind of peppered in, just because that's the kind of thing that I like the swordfish on the wall of the bar. I'd make
check out swordfish, right?
Exactly. Check out swordfish.
Yeah, don't say any more about the swordfish. Just check out the swordfish.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Keith, do you have anything? Because I know you've been quiet for the most part out of being part of it. But what about you? You edited this, so I did it pretty in depth. And you're not giving a review, but is there anything else that you might want to add or tack onto this? That,
I'm a little. I'm biased, right? Because I'm intimately familiar with both scenarios. I like both. I will admit I was a little apprehensive up front when I took on the project, because obviously Nazi bikers, right? The subject matter.
Yeah.
I have a background in history. I worked on when I was working on my master's degrees, the Holocaust. So this, obviously this could go the wrong way for me in a lot of different ways quickly. But I am happy to say for those listening that it's tactfully done within the guardrails of the Grindhouse aesthetic without being overtly offensive. So if you want to punch a Nazi, this is a great scenario to punch some damn Nazis.
Yeah.
And enjoy yourself doing it.
right. Well, and from our perspective, that made you a great editor for us because for that very reason, because you're going to be able to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, you came up with suggestions and stuff that to make a few alterations in the course of the narrative that I created that made sense,
Right.
And
at least I hope they made sense.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
So, I mean, without feeling like I'm giving a review, because that's obviously not my place to do since I'm so closely connected to the project. Sure. I did enjoy both scenarios. I will say they are vastly different. So Nazi Bikers is set in the southwest of the U.S., where Alex's scenario is set in Dunwich in New England in the winter. I mean, both are diametrically opposed in every way possible.
Right. Yeah.
With the only connecting thread is the courier bit. That is the connecting thread. And I love that thread that they are working with. This courier thing and this kind of idea that and I hope to see more of it in future scenarios, is a repeat to connect things together. And that would be the only way I can see, because Alex, you alluded to wanting to have like longer, potentially stringing together campaigns of Grindhouse scenarios, which is kind of hard to do without a thread, just because of the brutality of them.
Yeah.
But I think that the courier shtick, right, is the equivalent of the 1920s or even a Gaslight era investigator organization, right? Like Sherlock Holmes-y kind of thing.
And that was kind of the idea. And you'll be glad to know that James and I have been talking about having a couple scenarios coming up that are going to overtly go more deeply into that sort of world. Right? Like in these two cases, it was more like the hook that got the characters there.
Right.
But we're going to actually go more into the organization in depth in two more scenarios. And then one of the ones that I really have stuck in my head that I need to get out is I want to do a 1920s Grindhouse that involves hobos, because that's sort of the origin of this. But I definitely want it to be Grindhouse. So I want to see if 1920s Grindhouse is possible.
Oh, I think it's totally possible.
It might work. Yeah. It's going to take some. It's going to change some reconditioning. Especially for those who exclusively play in 1920s Call of Cthulhu, to kind of readjust their comfort zones. Because I don't know if you've ever seen the. Did you ever see Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio? That sort of modern age one.
Yeah.
And if anyone who's seen it knows that for the first like 5 minutes, your brain is desperately trying to get a hold of what it's watching, because they're speaking like Shakespearean language in Shakespearean English, and yet it's all modern trappings and so forth, and your brain is like trying to put those two things together. Once you get there, it's great. It's cool. But it takes your brain a minute to do that, and I think that's kind of what would happen with this as well. There'd be that adjustment period. And as long as we build in that adjustment period into it, I think it should work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the fact that it's going to be, it's the way we've talked about it. It's kind of like the starting point thematically or narratively of this larger universe. That all the Grindhouse scenarios and even stuff beyond that are kind of contained within tangentially. I mean, even I may be talking over myself, but didn't we mention that there is some sort of connection between the Tartarus precept and one of your earlier scenarios as well? Yeah,
well, yes, and in fact, I do try to include little Easter eggs in most of mine. Like there are Highway of Blood references in Carnival of Madness, and in and in fact. Bud of Bud's RPG review and I are working on we're currently working on one, but we're also going to be working on a sequel to Viral, and in that one there's going to be a lot more traveling around. It's definitely going to be more traditional Call of Cthulhu in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
But we're including abattoir, but brought up to the modern day,
Right?
And
no.
they have to go there for a reason, and
no. Oh no! Will they find Vandalay? That's all I want to know.
Hey, you know what? We can talk about that. You know, if you want that, we can make it happen for sure.
I want future players to find Vandalay on the road.
The greater question is Bud going to find his sunglasses that fell off during that scenario?
Oh,
that would be cool too.
I'll be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked or surprised if he tries to squeeze that in if he remembers it. So I will be letting him know just in case. So that'd be cool.
Yeah. So, there's in just about everyone there are sort of these little connective threads that you know, or just references, that tie back to it. So yeah, it already has the sort of, you know, cinematic universe to it.
Yeah.
But you know, with the Crossroads network, it's definitely going to get more of that as we go on.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. The world
Very
building
cool.
in me loves that sort of thing. The conversations we've been having about that is just like I said at the head. I love world building, and when he started to come to me with this, because the first instance of that was I created a character in Nazi Bikers called Rackham, who lives in Las Vegas, who runs and retroactively he's now going to become part of the Crossroads. But how it's came to me is I'm thinking about kind of expanding kind of this. Do you mind if I use Rackham and his location as part of that expansion? I'm like, I love that, and it's sort of for my involvement in it. It's kind of that's where it's sort of branched out from.
well, I heard Rackham's calling.
Rackham actually recently, just because I'm thinking of it, and I told this to Alex the other day. I was listening to Diogo Nogueira's podcast. They had a gentleman named Joey Royale on. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Joey Royale, yes. He's a character.
When I was listening to that podcast, I was like, "Oh my god, that's Rackham!" And I messaged Joey right away. I said, "You don't know me. I wrote this scenario. You are Rackham," and I described the character. And I said, just when I heard your voice, I knew that's what that'd be. So, if anybody ever plays Nazi Bikers Must Die and wants to know who Rackham is, go suss out Joey Royale, because Joey Royale is 100% Rackham.
Nice.
And the fact that with an expanded world, I'm going to be able to play with Rackham a bit more is really intriguing. And like I'm trying to develop ideas to maybe make a scenario in Las Vegas and have him be kind of front and center.
A Vegas scenario would be awesome. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine a more horrific city to have a Call of Cthulhu setting in than Las Vegas.
Maybe a heist gone wrong or something like that. Yeah.
Oh god!
There you go.
I'm thinking that, but mix in the psychedelic horrific aspects of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Just a mind bending twist.
Yeah, Fear and Loathing is literally just like in the next room over from Grindhouse.
Yeah.
Like
right.
you could take it there very easily.
We're gonna have to have a conversation about this.
Yeah.
I think the four of us are gonna have to talk about like doing some collaboration on some Grindhouse stuff.
Absolutely,
I got some ideas.
That'd be awesome
For this
100%.
wider world network stuff. I got some ideas. I bet Scott does too. So
I spent I've been to many a 3-day Grateful Dead festival back in the 90s in Las Vegas. It took place over 3 days. Completely indulged in various things. So I've seen that side of Vegas that probably drained several sanity points while I was there. So
right.
Keith, anything else, bud?
I got nothing. You know what?
Okay.
Talking about your Grateful Dead experiences, I think that's a great happy note to end this podcast segment on.
Yes, where the cops will be calling you soon to make sure that Jens, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and hopefully this was a different take. I know you've been making the rounds and talking with a few people and whatnot, so we hope that this wasn't just kicking a dead horse again, but
Not at
again,
all.
but you're our friend, so it's a lot more casual. And like I said, we don't have to respect you. We can treat you just how we normally treat you.
Yes.
We love you too, Scott.
But this is going to be going out, and in during the month of October. So this is the Halloween month. This is a time where people need to get their horrific horror scenarios.
So with that's a good segue real quick.
Yes.
Alex, would you like to make a pitch since this is going to go out in the spooky month?
Yes.
That is a great idea. We're still we just reached platinum with Carnival of Madness. And it's still going strong. I don't think we'll reach Mithril anytime soon because they recently upped the number you have to reach. But it does mean that until midnight on Halloween, you can still get Carnival of Madness for a really great deal, $6.66 for the PDF. I think we just took, I think it was like $5 off each of the print on demand ones, if I remember correctly.
I think so. Yeah.
So yeah, it's still on sale, still great, still available. And if you go to Zazzle, you can find the maps that come the sort of little when you go to like Carnival or a state fair or something like that, they have these little fold out maps to show you like the area, they're hand drawn things.
Yep.
You can buy those like professionally printed, and those are definitely one of my favorite handouts I've ever made, because I mean I love handouts anyway, but these are just so useful for playing the game. So if you I think there's probably a link to it in Carnival Madness anyway, but if not, there's you can find them.
We are professionals. We'll have links in the descriptions
that nobody ever looks at.
Yeah, no one looks at, but we still do it. No, sorry, carry on. So
yeah, I will say, go look at Carnival of Madness. Go check it out. Check out all of Alex's stuff. Check out the stuff James has worked on. Grindhouse Volume 4, stuff from Sons of the Singularity, any of the other projects he's mentioned. Please go check out all of the stuff that they've worked on. There's some fantastic stuff out there. Please support them in any way possible. Guys, where can they find you guys on social media if they want to find you there and engage with you? Alex.
Well, you can just find Alex Guillotte on Facebook. I'm also on Blue Sky
Blue
now.
Sky?
Blue Sky.
Yeah, I made it
Blue
to Blue Sky.
Twitter's a dumpster fire.
Under Gothnog. Yeah,
whatever it's called.
To be fair though, I'm still there. Because I just don't interact with it nearly as much. But
the Miskatonic Creator Circle, the Facebook group, is another good place to hit up you guys too, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
For those that
I'm
are
on there all the time.
creators, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of other amazing creators there as well.
Yeah, and if there's anyone out there that wants to create their own scenarios, I do. I give people who do Miskatonic Repository books a really good discount on doing the layout and production of your book if you're interested, because I want to see more people putting stuff out there. I want I want to see more of this out there, and if it's Grindhouse, even better.
Nice.
Nice.
Get some of that crossover going.
Nice.
Yeah.
James, where can people find you?
And mostly I find myself on Facebook, James Droucker on Facebook. I'm on Blue Sky as well. Look up James Droucker. Find me in the Mischester, typically on Fridays when I have time.
Down at the virtual pub.
Down at the virtual pub. That's it. I mean, I have no. I'm not like a social media promoter guy kind of thing. But I mean, at the same time, if you want to reach out to me and talk to me, I love hearing myself talk. I mean, that's
why the hell do you think all four of us are here right now? I mean, Jesus Christ, we're going on an hour and a half.
No, totally. But at the same time, like talking about the Miskatonic Creators Circle, I've been talking with a few guys on there. A gentleman named Antonio is trying to write his first scenario, and I'm trying to be his biggest booster. I'm like, just do it, man. And so I've hooked him up with some other creators and stuff like that. And,
good.
And it sounds like things are going well. So hopefully I can help him promote that and stuff like that. Just sort of give back, because people have given me chances and kind of egged me on, including Alex, giving me an opportunity to create something and giving me a chance to learn a whole new way of writing, really. And not that I'm an expert on it or anything like that, but if even in a small way, I can just say to somebody, hey, yeah, do it and have fun, that makes me feel good.
Nice.
Well, Keith, shall we ride on out into the sunset? Again, thank you guys for coming on to the podcast.
Can we do it on motorcycles while we chase down Nazis and beat them with baseball bats?
Only if we can hold hands as we're side by side on our motorcycles riding off into the distance.
Yeah, let's do it.
Just a stream of just broken Nazi paraphernalia behind us as we ride off into the sunset.
That's a great scratchy shot on the film.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, Titterpigs fam, just a quick reminder, we do have our Patreon going on. It's patreon.com/Titterpigs. You can show your support there. We have 2 tiers for you, a $3 and a $6 tier, so show us some love and be part of our growing community.
And speaking of our growing community, I'd like to give a shout out to our current Patreon members, Dr. Mitch, Jason Sheets, Bud's RPG Review, Dwayne Costa, William Payne, Lupus Malum, Salt Heart, Patrick Mullen, and our newest member, Dragon Girl 74.